Hello, everyone, and welcome to this month's AIM Technologies AIM Shop webinar. My name is James Colborn. I'm going to be your host today. I see a lot of familiar faces who are on the call, which is great. And I'm going to be co-presenting today with James, who's here from AIM as well, talking about SmartyCams, because I think that the most important thing that we're starting to identify is that with the advent of Race Studio 3 analysis, oops, my camera's just switched off. There it is, it's back. With the advent of Race Studio 3 analysis and the ability to be able to combine both data and video together into one instance, we're starting to get into a position where the conversation starts to arise, which is, well, how do I use this video and data together? So we're going to break today's webinar into a few key areas. And I'm going to present my screen, which I shall do right now. Excuse me just one second. And we project on the screen, swap those around. So you should all be able to see the full screen. Please give me a yes if you can. James, you give me a thumbs up. Are you seeing the full screen? Yep, cheers, mate. Which is lovely. So I'm just going to shrink that down to the presenter there. So really want to get into looking at SmartyCam data analysis a little bit today, because I think it's getting to the point where it's important that we start utilizing the data and the video together in terms of its use. Before we do, and as you can see on screen, we're going to be focusing on some of the new hardware that's been released from AIM over the last few weeks and months, really starting to focus on the next generation of the SmartyCam. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to start off with what we're going to cover off today. And what I'll ask is that if you're on today's webinar, please mute your microphones if you can, just in case you get unexpected visitors or guests or phone calls that are there. We'll have plenty of time to be able to have some Q&A at the end. And then we're going to cover off on these sort of four key areas. Now, the first is we're going to look at the next generation of SmartyCam, because I think it's interesting to understand the evolution of where that's going. And I'm going to ask James to be able to talk to some of that on screen and be able to sort of show us a lot of that sort of information which is there. The second is we're going to start looking at different ways of using the data. Now, one of the things you're going to identify as we go through is that SmartyCam videos themselves are fantastic tools to be able to analyze what's happening, regardless of whether you attach them to a data file or whether you look at the data and video together. And so one of the things we're going to focus on is starting to have a look at how SmartyCam videos on their own can actually be used. The second is starting to look at SmartyCam video data and the data from your logger or from your actual inputs together. And this is really sort of focusing on taking advantage of the Race Studio 3 analysis. And then I'm going to present at the end three scenarios where we're going to have a look at data and video working together in terms of how you can start analyzing that. And so without further ado, what I'm going to do is I'm going to sort of pass the screen over. I've got a slide that focuses on new tech, and then I'm going to stop presenting so James can actually give you sort of like a view of what the SmartyCam looks like, maybe with an unboxing. So I'll flick forward, James, and I'll leave the floor over to you to be able to talk about this, and then we'll get into the analysis a bit later on.
Thank you very much, James. Hi, everyone. I'm James from AIM Shop. And we're really excited to bring you the new SmartyCam 3 Sport. I'll do a little unboxing in a minute, and we'll show you what comes in the box and the camera and some of the main features of the camera. But first, I'll just mention, I suppose, the four cameras that we are bringing out this year. This is the Sport is a completely new camera for us, but we are also bringing out a update of the current HD camera for us and an update of the GP 2.2. They'll be called. We've got the GP and the Compact 3. So they will be coming out, I think, probably towards the end of the year. The other new camera that will be coming out towards the end of the year is the Dual. So that's basically like a GP camera, but with two bullet cameras, which is going to be very popular, very much appreciated by a lot of customers, been asked for a long, long time. So yeah, that's the three cameras that are coming out. Now this is the one that we've just released. So we've got SmartyCam 3 Sport. So nice little box. What you get inside is dependent on what you order, but you will get obviously your standard charger, standard like solo charger, that sort of thing. You'll get your CAN cable, which is the only connection that you can have with the SmartyCam 3 Sport. There's only one port on the back of it, so it has to run with a ordinary AIM device. It looks like I stopped shooting. Can you see me all right?
Yeah, we can see you all right, mate.
Yeah. Sorry, it's okay. So it stopped on my screen. Yeah, so it's that's the only cable you can get, and I'll show you here where it connects. So we've just got the one little port on the back. So this is the camera. You've got it's a brand new design. So one of the main features that is really, really popular about this camera is the locking mechanism for the side door. So let me just show you that. So whereas before we had like a really awkward like little thumb screw that a lot of people struggle with to get undone and get tightened back up, but now we've got a nice little, just it pushes in, central locking point there, and makes it completely watertight inside. So what we've got is we've got a 30 frames per second camera. This one is a 67 degree lens, but you can tell on the front whether it's a 67 or 84, the same as you could before, by if it's a red ring, you've got a 67. If it's an 84, you've got a black ring. What we've got on there is we've got a global Cosmos sensor, and we've got a sapphire front glass. So the benefits for the glass, the upgrade for the glass is really, really important, because we've obviously a lot of being out in the elements and stone chips or anything like that. The glass we've used on this version of the camera is much more robust. So it will take a lot more impacts and potentially damage before we start getting chips like we did on the old lenses. So that's a big step forward as well. It's like all AIM cameras, auto start, stop, auto record. It can take up to 2 terabyte SD card. So that's really, really good. That's a big step forward for like what James was just talking with James earlier about the racing he's just done with some endurance racing. Having a 2 terabyte SD card storage, it's phenomenal. So you've got no problems there with coming in for a pit stop or anything like that. If you change an SD card like you used to, there's no need to do that anymore. What else have we got with the camera? We've also got one thing that's quite important to mention is, unlike our other versions of camera that have quite a sensible battery inside, the battery inside this camera for the Sport 3 is a very, very short lifespan of battery. It's not designed to power the camera. It's purely designed just to get the camera turned on. It's purely designed for you to be able to change some settings, some bits and pieces like that. So that's why with your normal CAN cable to connect to an AIM logger like a Micron or an MXS or whatever you may have, that's why there's only one port there. So this cable will connect the camera to your dash, to your Micron, whatever it may be. That's how the camera will take its power. One thing to point out is there's an option when you choose which camera you would like, there is an option to choose a 2-port data hub. And that really, the main installation for that will be for karting. If it was to be used with a Micron, like a lot of these have been sold for karting already, obviously it's the perfect size for a kart, be mounted on the radiator. Again, obviously the Micron battery isn't really powerful enough to power the camera, and it won't run on its own. So you would need this 2-port hub, because it's got your connection there for the camera, but it's also got a positive and negative to run an external battery. So that would then also power the Micron as well. So that's one thing that's really important is to note, is that it's not like our other cameras that can just run on its own. It does need always to have that battery feed to it. What else have we got inside? The same sort of focusing technology. You can focus it the same. You can adjust all the settings the same. It can do everything all the old cameras can do, just in a much smaller, more compact box. Just standard camera fittings. So like our ordinary mounts that we do at the moment, all fit that perfectly. For karting, we are in the process of bringing out some purpose radiator fittings for the camera, because obviously at the moment there's not sort of a bespoke radiator style mount, but that is something that we're working on. I think in the next month or so we'll bring out a purpose radiator mount that will hold the camera and also take out any sort of vibration as well. So I think that will be really beneficial. I think I've covered everything. Obviously, we've got the same feeds in terms of automatic track recognition. So if it's connected to a micron, it will take the track feed from there. So yeah, there's lots of new graphics as well, and we're going to be releasing even more for the overlays. So there's lots of new cool modern graphics that are available for the Sport 3 that are not available for the older cameras. So that's something really exciting. Yeah, I think I've covered it all. If I've missed anything, drop it in the comments, or if James, if you can think of anything that I've missed.
No, I think that the and we will do a webinar on configuring the new SmartyCam 3 generation, because it's slightly different. I have had some questions already of people who have watched tutorials on how to configure the old SmartyCams and what's different with the new ones. But for me, one of the things that I'm particularly interested in, it sounds like a tiny feature, but when you create an overlay for the new SmartyCam, and we'll read out some of the questions in a minute. When you're creating your overlay, you can have the predictive time now on your overlay, which has been long time coming type of capability. And so, very much sort of enhancing that experience that some of the things that we do when we're driving, we're looking at predictive laps. It's good to be able to see what the impact has been in terms of your on-track performance as to what it does to your lap time outside of being in the car. So there's a few things that I personally am really excited in terms of the feature and function. Now we've got a few questions on the new generation SmartyCam. So let's read those out to start off with, and then we can get into some of the new content. So the first question we have is from Simon, which is, are there any changes to the microphone on these devices?
No, there's no changes to the microphone. We haven't, obviously there's an internal microphone for the camera. It's not like the other cameras where we've got external microphone cables. There's nothing like that for this camera. Obviously we only have the one connection on the back, whereas everything else we've got is possibility for external mics and intercoms and stuff like that. There's not that possibility with this camera. So no, it's just your internal mic. Yeah, that's it really.
Cool. Next question is, so which do you need, a 67 or an 84? Guessing the age-old question of the SmartyCam, which one do I choose for which purpose?
Yeah, it's everyone asks that. It's a very good question. If I'm honest, there isn't, if you put them side by side, there is a difference obviously, but it's not huge. We would always recommend a 67 for something like a closed cockpit car, something like a rally car or a track day car or something like that. We would always recommend you 67 because you're going to focus, you're going to get more of the shot through the windscreen and of the track, unless you want to capture more of the driver input. And if that was the case, then I would go towards the 84. But for like karting, for example, I'd recommend the 84 because you get a wider field, so you can see more of what's going on with the steering and the driver inputs. So it completely depends installation on installation, but as a rule of thumb, we always say anything closed cockpit, we recommend a 67. And then if it was like a Caterham or something like that, we'd say 84. Obviously a single seater, this isn't designed realistically for a single seater. That's what the GP cameras are for. But obviously they go to 120 lens for that.
Cool. Thank you. One of the recommendations has been made by Peter Krause, has said wheel to wheel is recommended 84. And I know that Peter has been working with AM in the US for ever and a day. So I think that's sound advice. One question that has been asked though is, so these are 5-pin connectors from the Logger, is that correct?
That's correct, yeah. So it's just our standard CAM network connection. So it's the same connector as you would get on CAN EXP GPS connection. It's all our 5-pin 712 binder. I don't know if you'll be able to see it, but I'll try and show you it.
Almost.
Yeah, almost.
It's super HD for that one to come out.
There you go. I need our quality camera on my computer camera, don't I? You better see it then.
Well, brilliant. Well, James, thank you. I think that's a nice overview. And I said, I think we're going to be, James and I talked about doing webinars as we go through. And then I think as more of these are released, looking at different ways of being able to configure these and set that up over time. I've had my hands so far on one of the little SmartyCam 3 Sports, but haven't had a chance to use it yet. And so as we go through the next part of our webinar, we're actually going to be using SmartyCam data from the last generation, the 2.1, but the purpose will be exactly the same. It's like, how can I use that data? How we can go forward? So as we go forward with that, it'll be exciting. So look out for future webinars as we look at new devices.